Hi, folks. I thought it would be useful for us to go over an example of what a thesis statement and topic sentence would look like for this particular assignment. So within our course website itself, I've created an example outline worksheet for this assignment. So you can find this example inside of Learning Unit 2. And if you simply go into Module 1, and scroll to the bottom, you'll see example outline worksheet for paper 2, gender roles. So I'm going to pull that example up now. So this is an example that I created because I wanted to show you a model for how to do this. This assignment has asked you to look at a text of some sort, to analyze a visual text of some sort, to analyze the ideas that you think that visual text is sending about either gender or race. When we talk about a visual text, again, most of the time we're thinking about a television show, a film, could be a music video or something like that. But TV shows and films tend to be what people want to do for this because TV shows and films gives you character, gives you a plot, gives you things that are happening that you can then analyze. So again, for this assignment, you're going to choose to either analyze ideas about either gender or race and ethnicity. For this example, what I did was tried to look at a visual text, a TV show, for the ideas it was sending about gender. So the TV show I chose was The Simpsons because this is a very long-running show. It's been around for 30-something years. And looking at it, you can find a lot of ideas being conveyed about gender. So to do this, I want to sort of model the process for you. I've seen many episodes of The Simpsons over the years, but with this particular assignment in mind, I still sat down and I watched a few episodes. And as I was watching the episodes, I actually wrote down details that were coming to me as I was watching that particular episode or those episodes about gender. So things that characters did, the way that they were described, how they were represented within their families, how they were represented within society. I tried to write down a lot of these different details that I thought in one way or another related to gender. Once I had that list of long textual details, I then tried to figure out, okay, do some of these details have things in common? So that's how I created categories. So what you'll see here on my outline worksheet, I've created, you'll see in the parentheses here, these little categories: careers, destructive versus constructive. These are just categories that I created for my own thought process. But they helped me to develop messages or ideas that I think the show is conveying about those areas that deal with gender. So let's look at my first example. So my first topic sentence covers the area of careers in regards to gender. And here's the topic sentence I developed. This show suggests that women are more capable than men when they focus on achieving career goals, but they are prone to forsake those goals in order to mask the inadequacies of the men in their lives. So that would be my topic sentence. As I'm actually writing this paper, underneath that topic sentence in the supporting sentences, I would then give specific details from the show that back up that statement. I would talk about specific examples where Marge has taken on a career. And if you've seen episodes of The Simpsons, you'll see every time Marge gets a job, she's too good at it. And it makes Homer feel inadequate. And so she ends up usually giving it up because she feels like she's not able to focus enough on being a mother and a wife. But I would point to specific examples of that. Now notice that my topic sentence isn't referring to Marge or any of the characters. My topic sentences need to be the messages that the show is sending about actual gender. In other words, about women. The messages or ideas can't just only apply to the fictional characters within this show. I need to be able to argue that the show is conveying these messages about real world gender. So again, that first message that I think the show is sending is that women are more capable than men when it comes to career. And yet they're usually asked to not focus on those career goals because it makes men feel inadequate. That's essentially what I've said in my topic sentence there. So that's one topic sentence, and you can see how that would help me build one specific body paragraph. I'd start with that topic sentence, and then underneath, I'd give examples from the show that demonstrate that particular point. My second topic sentence, I noticed that there tended to be what I would categorize as destructive versus constructive behavior within the show. So that helped me come up with this second topic sentence. The Simpsons suggest that men are prone towards being inherently destructive forces in society and in their personal lives. Therefore, they need women to tame, redirect, and correct for these tendencies. So that's the insight that I've developed here based on details that I saw within the show. So underneath this, as I'm writing this actual paragraph, I would then need to put in specific examples, specific things I see in the show where Homer or Bart or other male characters are doing things that are destructive within society and in their personal lives, and showing how they tend to need some women within their lives to help kind of fix these destructive tendencies. I'd have to give specific examples to demonstrate that that's truly what's happening within the show. But notice again, with the way I wrote this topic sentence, the topic sentence doesn't simply refer to the characters. I don't mention the specific characters in my topic sentence because the topic sentences are these messages that the show is sending about gender itself, about gender in the actual world. And the characters and the details from the show are the examples that back up, that demonstrate that that is the message I think is really coming across. Okay, my next topic sentence. Here I just noticed a number of things in the show about intellect. The Simpsons suggest that women are uniformly more intellectual and have more common sense than men. When I see the show, I see that the women are clearly smarter than the men. And yet the men end up being in positions of power and having jobs that often require them to use their brains. But women are the ones who are just plain smarter than men. And I would point to many examples within the show. We see that with Lisa, we see that with Marge, we see that with other female characters as well. So again, I would use this topic sentence to start off my body paragraph, and then I would back it up with the textual details, the evidence, the details from the show that seems to demonstrate that point. Now notice the way I'm phrasing these topic sentences. I want to phrase each of these topic sentences as a message that the show is sending about gender. So the way to do that, you could say, the Simpsons sends the message that. I haven't used that exact phrasing. I'm using phrasing like The Simpsons suggests, or this show suggests. You could use phrasing similar to that. The point is you're trying to make sure that your topic sentence is making clear that the visual text you've chosen is sending this particular message about the issue of gender. Okay, my last topic sentence. The Simpsons suggest that men ultimately come to value women upon recognizing their own emotional bonds towards the women in their lives. And then I would back this up with specific examples that I see from the show, where the men in the show seem to recognize women as valued people because they recognize how much they personally are affected by those women emotionally, whether they be their wives, their girlfriends, their mothers, their sisters. Those would be the kinds of examples I would use. I would point to specific examples of characters having that kind of recognition, the male characters having that recognition of women's value. But generally, I would say in the show, it's only because they recognize that those women mean something to them emotionally. So I didn't just randomly come up with these topic sentences. It took me quite a while to develop these. Again, I watched the show. So whatever visual text that you choose, even if it's a movie or TV show that you've seen before, you need to watch it again with this assignment in mind, with this idea of looking for textual details, stuff that happens, the way characters are described, things that they say that seem to relate to this issue of either gender or race, depending on which path you're taking with your paper. In my case, I sat down with The Simpsons, I watched a few episodes, and I wrote down details of stuff that I was seeing that related to issues of gender. And then I kind of categorized those details into these 4 categories that you see here. Now, these 4 categories worked for me for this particular show. There were other textual details that I noticed, but I didn't really know what else to do with them, so I just ended up throwing them aside. These 4 categories worked for me for this show. You can't necessarily use these exact same categories for every visual text that you might analyze because it might not work. That might not be what's going on within the visual text that you're analyzing. Now, I just kind of put those categories in parentheses for my own sake, just to keep track of it, just to kind of make sure in my own brain I'm clear as to what I'm trying to focus on and within that topic sentence. You don't have to do that. You just have to develop the topic sentence itself. Now, again, you start with that, watching the visual text, collecting your textual evidence as best you can, the details that you see related to gender or race, and then you develop these topic sentences. You're going to need at least 4 of them. So I've developed 4 example topic sentences here. Once I've developed my topic sentences, then I'm ready to write my thesis. You cannot write a thesis until you've written your topic sentences first. You have to figure out, this paper is asking you to analyze what messages is the Simpsons sending about gender. So I need my topic sentences to be those 4 key messages that I see coming across. So that's the way you got to approach it. What messages do you see your visual text sending about either gender or race? And then you've got your at least 4 topic sentences that are 4 distinct, 4 different messages that are coming across, not just 4 ways of saying the exact same thing. You notice that the 4 topic sentences I have here are not making the exact same points. They're pointing out different issues, different elements of gender in terms of the messages that are being sent. So once I've crafted my topic sentences, that is by far the hardest part. Once you've gotten to the point of crafting those topic sentences, you're then ready to try to bring them together in a thesis. So that's why on the outline worksheet, I have the thesis at the end. Don't even attempt the thesis until you've developed your topic sentences and they look really strong, because only then will a thesis be possible. Because what your thesis does at that point is basically just summarizes those 4 or 5 key points that you are making in your topic sentences. So here's my thesis with the example I just gave you. The Simpsons suggest that because men are inadequate and potentially destructive in their careers and society, women must forsake their own career goals in order to mask the inadequacies of men and temper these destructive tendencies. However, the show also recognizes the intellect of women and the emotional potential of men. So all I tried to do in that thesis is really summarize the key ideas that I had in my topic sentences without using the exact same phrasing and repeating everything all over again. But I am hitting all 4 of those key points. That's what a proper thesis is going to do once you've developed those strong topic sentences. So in your writing process, the development of those topic sentences is absolutely essential. Now, I've said this a few times already, but I'll say it again. As you're crafting your topic sentences, do not make the topic sentences about characters in that movie or show or whatever it is that you're analyzing. If your topic sentences are referring to characters, then you're off track. The messages cannot just be about a character in a movie or a character in a show. That is not a message about gender. The messages have to be about the broader issue itself. So again, look at the phrasing that I have here. The phrasing here are these insights that I think the show is sending its messages about women and men. So I phrase it in that way. I will refer to individual characters, but not in the topic sentences. I'll do that in the supporting sentences underneath those topic sentences as I'm crafting my body paragraphs. Okay, this same kind of approach, if you're looking at a visual text for the ideas it's conveying about race and ethnicity, you would follow the same kind of approach. And, whether you're taking the gendered approach with this or the approach that looks at race, it's going to be the exact same kind of approach. You're looking at the messages that the film or TV show or whatever visual text you've chosen, in that case, would be sending about race and ethnicity. So I do recommend kind of like coming up with these categories, these elements of race and ethnicity that you think are being dealt with within the visual text that you're looking at. You want to think about what are the ideas that are ultimately being sent to us, the audience, the viewers of that program or of that film. The ideas that are being conveyed to us, how we're being asked to think about these things based on who we're supposed to like, who we're supposed to be rooting for, and what happens to them. That's going to impact the messages that we as the viewers ultimately get. Okay, so again, I put this example within the course website because I want you to be able to use this as a model to help you as you're going through your own writing process. So again, just to clarify where that is, simply go into Learning Unit 2, click on Module 1, which you're doing for homework anyways. And if you haven't already seen it, go through this example outline worksheet so you can see this particular example. Now, because I've given you this specific example on The Simpsons, you may not choose to write your paper about The Simpsons. Okay, that is, I mentioned earlier that there's going to be a few visual texts that I tell you you can't do. This is one of the ones you cannot write your paper about because I've already done it. Once you have your topic sentences in your thesis, then the actual writing the paper shouldn't be that difficult because this is figuring out all of the key points that you're going to make. This process, developing this outline worksheet, is by far the most important part of the writing process. This will probably take you more time and thought than the actual writing of the full paper itself. Developing your topic sentences in your thesis, that's essential to, once you figured this out, once you figured out these key points, then writing the paper isn't that challenging because you've already figured out the key ideas that you want to say and how to really articulate them. These are actual sentences that would be the lead sentences in my body paragraphs. And this is the actual thesis that would be the actual thesis statement at the end of my intro paragraph. That's what you're going to be developing here too. So this is the most important, by far, part of the writing process. I tried to get this across clearly with the first paper, but I'll kind of repeat it again. If you do well on this outline worksheet step and you really use these topic sentences and this thesis to develop your paper, then you're going to have a strong paper. If you don't put in the time and effort necessary to develop a good outline worksheet, then you're probably going to do very poorly on the paper. It's a very strong predictor of your success because, again, these are the key elements you must have to develop a good paper. You have to have your key ideas figured out, clearly articulated as topic sentences. Being able to do that, to articulate your thoughts clearly and distinctly, where you actually have, in this case, at least 4 different points that you're making about gender within that particular text, within that particular show or film or whatever it is that you've chosen to analyze. Okay, so I'm hoping that this example is helpful to you. If you have questions, of course, you're welcome to email me, but I encourage you to start proceeding towards the writing of your outline worksheet. And as you're working on it, if you want me to look at part of it, if you want me to look at your first 2 topic sentences to see if you're on the right track, if you want me to give you feedback as you go, I'm happy to do that. Just send it to me via email and I'll give you a quick response. Okay, take care, folks.